the South African Police Service is warning of a kidnapping syndicate in Gauteng that targets mainly the queer community. According to authorities, the criminals use a popular dating app called Grindr in order to lure victims, kidnap them before robbing them. Now, these kinds of cases have been on the rise across the country in recent months. Let's get you a sense of what else we know so far. Bring in Herman Bosman, who's the head of Kidnapping and Extortion Consulting with TSU International. Herman, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us. I mean, those who know Grindr probably use it. Take us through what the modus operandi is here. How does this typically work?
Well, good day to you and your listeners. Yes, we currently see various types of kidnappings in South Africa, so it's a very wide range. It varies from dating sites where people are met online, confidence built, and when you set a meeting, you are then targeted and taken at that location, to where you are very well researched and taken en route when traveling between home and work or back. So it very much depends on the group itself that targets the potential victim and where they decide to prey on those targeted victims.
Yeah. And in most instances, I imagine a dating app is the kind of place where trust has to factor in, right? You're speaking to a stranger, you're aware of that, and you're hoping that when you guys finally meet, the person is who they say they are. And I suppose that's the vulnerability that these particular criminals are taking advantage of.
Yes, very well, and structured from their side. They plan this properly. They build proper confidence from what they offer you and tell you. So with a desperate person on the other side that wants a relationship, and sometimes with very good intentions also, you are then becoming a victim of this circumstance where we want to believe people on the other side. Sometimes confidence builds over weeks, sometimes over months, and sometimes even over years, depending on the type of profit that they anticipate to receive from this arrangement.
Wow. Are there any telltale signs that you reckon people should look out for, especially from your line of work and given your experience, that you reckon typically point to a possible syndicate around kidnapping?
Well, it once again depends on we're talking dating or online sites or just having to go to a meeting. Normally when we look at arranging a meeting, you should decide where that first meeting must be. You should dictate circumstance. In other words, if it's a business-related type of meeting, then it must be at a location that you determine and that you can have basically control over the environment and that location, and not a location that was offered to you, and in many cases, en route there, they change it, and you have absolutely no idea where you're going to or what you're going to have to confront. So I think the key word here is you take control and research the person and the company that allegedly wants to meet you. Make sure they do exist. Make 100% sure that it's authentic to the best of your ability before you go into a meeting like this. And if in many cases possible, also consider taking a colleague with you.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's just restricted to sites or apps like Grindr, Herman. I mean, you speak more broadly of dating sites. Are you finding that it's widespread, or there's typically been a concentration on that platform?
No, it's widespread. This has been a problem for very, very long. This is definitely not only Grindr or specific sites. This is a holistic thing where anybody that wants to have a meeting with you or an arrangement with you on any site, they happen to now use a certain site I just mentioned, but that is just where they now prey on people. And obviously it's a problem, but I think it's just as much a problem on any of the other sites. And I've had people meeting up and have an arrangement on those sites, and then at the end of the day, when they go to the meeting, they take an hostage and the bank accounts are emptied and used, and in many cases they do not want to go to the police and complain about this due to the sensitivity and the nature of the incident. Many of the people targeted and the victims are either married or in a relationship, so they hesitate to approach the police and have this publicly known.
I wonder if it's worth speaking about, okay, probably not, because you're saying this is widespread across many other platforms, but I was going to ask a question around whether or not there's any kind of hate crime involved in this, because we know that in the past there's been some kind of attitude towards the queer community, and that's certainly the kind of people who would be victims in a situation where Grindr is involved.
Yeah, specifically on this question, I think it would be really risky to comment from my side, as I know there's been arrests and the case is pending, and I'm not privileged to the content of what has been found in this. For me, it seems to be at this point in time a financial reason behind it, but there may also be other reasons behind this, and as I've just highlighted, when people are targeted, they prefer to choose targets that's somehow in a relationship, married, or for some reason do not want to be known that they use either certain platforms or in certain relationships or went to certain dating arrangements because of other contractual arrangements or even marriage. So it's more about that than targeting a specific grouping as far as I'm concerned. But the current cases, I would rather refrain from commenting on that.
Fair enough. And I suppose you've answered my next question in part, but speak to us a bit more about the people typically who fall for these kind of things. And this time I'm thinking also the age demographic. Are you finding it more widespread or typically a certain age population?
It is very, very widespread. I've had elderly people that's on pension that is very lonely and that end up on various sites. And in those regards, they are targeted because of the fact that they are already on pension, they have a fund, they have cash, they have money. To young children that is fall victim of sextortion and being asked to send pictures of themselves and then being extorted. Also afraid to go to the mother and fathers and the authorities because of the nature of those incidents. So it's extremely widespread. I also want to allude and warn children and parents that when children are using online gaming, you don't know who you're playing with on the other side and who's the gamers on the other end. And you end up giving away a lot of information about yourself unintendedly while playing this game. For you, it's about the game. For them, it's about getting information from you. You, in many cases, may even win and feel so good about this, and it's just purely because they are not focused on the game so much as you are, or they let you win so that you feel so good about yourself and you're having this wonderful time online with them and giving them a lot of information about yourself to become a target or even about your parents.
So interesting, the mind games that go into this, because that's really what's probably at the heart of how some of these perpetrators actually eventually corner their victims. But in a situation where, for instance, I've handed over this information, let's say, I don't know, a very compromising image of myself, how do I respond to someone who's trying to extort me for that? Because I've seen people taking the decision to rather out themselves so as to disempower or disarm the perpetrator. You know, like, for instance, if I send through a naked picture of myself and you threaten to publish it, I publish it myself so that whatever bargaining power you've had is lost to you. Is that advisable?
Well, no, I wouldn't go as far as that. I mean, if you're open to publishing about yourself, well, probably your choice. But what I would, in a case like this, recommend, number one, don't publish anything about yourself. In itself, you may be committing a crime. Secondly, if you did publish this and you hoped it was confidential and it is now not and somebody's extorting you, then make sure that all your online profiles of all the sites that you do use and all your social media apps that you have are set on private or even stopped so that they cannot post it to people that know you and that is basically going to tarnish your character. So from that point of view, also do not start to make payments to them. Payments to them is not going to stop them publishing the moment you stop making those payments. So payment is not going to guarantee they're not going to publish it, and if you stop, that's definitely going to annoy them, and they will, in any event, in that case, go that far to publish if they deem that you had more money and you could pay more, and you become a regular payer. I've had a person in Cape Town that has paid 1.5 million rand to try and stop this as long as it doesn't leak to his wife, and he still didn't stop. By the time I was approached, he's really paid 1.5 million rand.
Wow. Out of interest, where did that case land up?
Well, I handed it all the information we did determine who it was and everything to the police and to my client. And at that point, they said they will deal with it. I pretty much doubt whether it did occur that they did deal with that, but they had all the information, pictures, locations, names, everything about the perpetrators.
All right. Herman Bosman, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Really sobering advice there as we continue watching some of these different stories unfold. Herman, once again, thank you. He's the head of Kidnapping and Extortion Consulting at TSU International. I appreciate your time.